But no, we're excited to have you on, Mickey. Like I said, I like the podcast a lot. We had Harry on to preview, and I'm curious if I'm sure you probably listened to the preview. We didn't call the move. That's unfortunate. We didn't. I was hoping we would predict whatever the trade was. That would be very tough, especially with the Pistons, because I think you had a feeling they weren't going to necessarily go according to plan, quote unquote, with what a lot of the media was reporting and the rumors that were going around. I mean, I remember that time frame where Anthony Davis was rumored to the Pistons, but nobody actually connected to the Pistons was really confirming that in any way, and it seemed like kind of a poor fit. And then they had the other kind of 3-and-D big guys that were rumored to them, but they did end up getting rid of Jaden Ivey, unfortunately, because Javen Hunter, his dad, is a friend of the show, so we're kind of sad about that. But what do you think of the trade and of the deadline as a whole? What would you give it as a grade here?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have been able to predict it. I did not have Kevin Huerter on my bingo card, and I've had some time to think about it. And the more time I have and the more I think about it, the more I like it. I want to say B+. I would give it a B+ probably. And there were rumors circling. You're right. Omari Sankopa II with the Free Press wrote a piece about how Michael Porter Jr. made sense on the team. I know a lot of people were in that camp. I personally was not. But as far as what Trajan Langdon said he would do, I think he held really true to that. He talked about prioritizing continuity, not making a big swing. And last deadline, he made little moves around the margins. I think we got Dennis Schroeder for free, basically, and he ended up being huge for us in the playoffs. And so we got Kevin Huerter, and I know a lot of people aren't super psyched about it just because his three-point numbers are down, but he's 6'6". His two-point percentage shots are at an all-time high. I think he's like 63% on twos. He plays sneaky good defense. I remember the last time the Pistons played him, Tobias couldn't back him down with his patented turnaround fade. And he can go get a bucket. So ideally, I would love to see his deep shooting touch get rehabbed. But even if it doesn't, I think we have another bucket getter that we desperately needed. And I really think the big priority of the deadline was Danis Jenkins. And I want to say congratulations to him on the highest single season conversion ever for a two-way player. Really exciting stuff.
That's a really cool story. Yeah, I want to go back to that in a minute for sure. With the Huerter thing, I'm completely with you on a lot of that. I was not, and I told Harry this, I was not in the Michael Porter Jr. camp. That would be a very tough sell for me because I get the theoretical fit. I get the fit if we're playing NBA 2K. I think in the actual NBA, I don't think it's as great of a fit. It could be. That doesn't mean that it's going to be doomed. We don't really go with hot takes on this show. It's just the idea that I do like what they have culture wise, and I do get that they need somebody that's a big that can shoot like Porter Jr. I think you've got something good going, like you said, and they valued the continuity, the culture fit, and unfortunately, I do think that was a little bit of the trade with Ivy. I think they identified somebody in Huerter that will only be a value add. He may not play. We'll see how consistently he plays in general, but I do think some of those metrics are going to improve for him. But on the Ivy side of things, I think he's going to be a good player in the NBA. I think he's got a lot of talent, but it was hard for him to find a fit for a myriad of reasons on this team, including the fact that he had the unfortunate back-to-back injuries. He got on what I've been constantly calling a moving train with this team mid-season, and it just wasn't working well. It wasn't a disaster, but you could tell he just wasn't feeling good. It almost felt like he needed a fresh start, and I don't know what that would have meant for his ability to be re-signed. That's the part that I was worried about. And so I hope he does well. Obviously he's playing for a rival now, but I do hope he does well. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think he's going to work hard at it, but it wasn't a good fit for a team that went from, hey, who's going to play on this team and start for this team 2 years ago to, oh, we have maybe one of the deepest rotations in the NBA now.
Yeah, I love Ivy too, and I really wish the best for him. I watched the Chicago-Denver game recently just to sort of check in from across the league. I have a lot of friends in Chicago. I went to school in Chicago, so I really hope this ends up being the best thing for both parties. And I think in that game, he actually had his season high of minutes. So it's going to be a really good environment for him to get a lot of run, get his feet underneath him, and just sort of show what he can do. But you're absolutely right about the timing, and I think it was the right move. And I think Kevin Huerter, in a worst-case scenario, he's expiring. So what Trajan has done is he's brought in someone who can hopefully get us buckets, and either way, we're flexible still. So it's a good position to be in. But, I mean, so many great Ivy moments. He had a couple huge game winners last season and was a part of us turning things around and really wanted to be here. I remember when he cried getting drafted. It just meant a lot to this rebuilding squad, and I wish him the best.
Me too. And as far as the Huerter side of things, that's the part that I really think they did get some value, as far as they did give away a piece, and they did give away somebody that I think is going to have value, but it's not necessarily from their side of things with the contract being in flux and not necessarily being able to re-sign them. But on the Huerter side of things, it's funny because you talk about the 3-point shooting being down, and I just look at that and I think, look at these teams that he's been playing on. Now he gets to play with Cade Cunningham and the rest of the crew. I think that's going to return to the mean, so to speak, pretty quickly for Huerter, because that's what I know people were sad when Beasley wasn't able to be re-signed. Some people wanted Hardaway back, but the idea is, we're seeing it with Duncan Robinson and others, Cade is the type of player that's going to raise a shooter's percentages for the most part, because he knows where to get him the ball, how to get him the ball. And so I just think once they get the flow of the game going, Huerter's numbers are going to go up pretty much automatically, because there's got to be, it's almost like you have to add a little boost for playing with Cade Cunningham, just finding you in the right spots.
100%. I think Cade makes his teammates better. You know, you see it with Duren, just constantly feeding him lobs, pocket passes, and with shooters, he always wants to find them on the perimeter. And yeah, last year we had Hardaway and Beasley, and this season Duncan's been our only real volume shooter. So look, whether Huerter knocks him down or not, he's going to get plenty of great looks. And I think the nice thing about him too is that he still has a reputation in the league. He is both a volume and movement shooter, so I think we're still going to enjoy the benefits of the gravity that he commands and the closeouts that he commands. He's still on the scouting report. I don't think anyone thinks that he just doesn't shoot the ball well anymore. And yeah, any improvement that can be made in that department will help this team in a major way.
The team's so deep to begin with, which is incredible. I mean, like I said, the depth is really pretty remarkable for what they started with and where they came from 2 years ago here, because there are a lot of guys that are playing themselves onto the floor. But we got to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk some Danis, because his name has changed over the course of the season. Some Danis Jenkins. I have to retrain myself for that, because he's a great story. I've been following him for a while. I've been talking about him on the show for a while, actually. And so I'm pleased to see him finally get converted and get what he deserved. But we'll come back with Mickey Jacobs of the Order of the Blazing Horse and talk some more Pistons with him. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Here with Mickey Jacobs of the Order of the Blazing Horse podcast, talking some Pistons. And I love talking Danis Jenkins, because I was talking about him when he was in Summer League and playing pretty well a couple years ago, and we have Chad Bush on the show pretty regularly, play-by-play guy for the Crews. So we've been talking about a lot of the we kind of nerd out on the G League team whenever he comes on, and it's just such a great story. And I do think it's part I think it's part and parcel with the discussion of Jaden Ivey, because they, not so long ago, as I'm sure you remember, Mickey, there was a lot of talk. Well, okay, there's not really a lot of secondary ball handling behind Cade. What are we going to do? We've got Ivey getting into the mix, but he hasn't filled in there. And now we swung from that to, what do we do with all these guards? We don't have. We've got 96 minutes between the 1 and the 2 spots. Cunningham's got to play a lot of that, at least a third of it. And so what do we do with the rest of these minutes? And that's the equation I always try to push on people, because they'll say, well, this person should be playing more, or we should do this at this position. But you're going to have certain minutes for certain guys. Thankfully, this is a rotation that's good with the ever-changing minutes they receive, some of them. But that's really part of what I think that what made them more comfortable to say, yeah, it's been hard for us to get Ivey back into the rotation, not because he's not a good player, but because the rotation has been very strong without him, especially because of the emergence of a guy that was supposed to be a two-way fill-in guy, and he's been one of the one of the higher performing guards in that rotation.
It's such a cool story. We call him the Jankyard Dog on the podcast.
I like it.
We love Danis. But yeah, no, he's stepped up big time, and I love that Trajan, really kind of made him him and Herter are kind of the centerpiece of the trade deadline, and the team so desperately, as you said, needs additional ball handling besides Cade. We saw how important Dennis Schroeder was in the playoffs, and he's really a point guard. We had Sasser kind of playing some backup point last year, and Sasser's a really efficient scorer, and he, by the way, did fine. But Danis just really loves to move the ball, loves to attack, and just force the defense to collapse and create opportunities for his teammates. He gets some clutch buckets. He's a 3-level scorer. A lot to like from this young guy. And yeah, we've been watching him since like a couple summer leagues ago, and it's like, wow, he looks really interesting. And you never know if someone's just a killer in the G League. Like, I don't know if you remember Saban Lee was just like G League MVP, unbelievable, kind of struggled to find his footing in the league. But it's really cool that Danis is doing it in the NBA as well.
I agree. And yeah, that is a good comparison. Yeah, it's Saban Lee. And then obviously, in that same time frame, you had a guy like Killian Hayes that had talent. I know people now he's like kind of a curse word for Pistons fans, but I mean, you can see his talent, and then you saw him down in the he's kind of roaming around the G League, but there are certain things that translate to the G League pretty well. But man, Danis is almost the opposite. He was a very good player in the G League, but his game transfers to the NBA so well, because the things he was doing well in the G League, he's continuing to do well, even with lower usage, because that's what it really all becomes when you're in the G League. You get guys that are, maybe they're like fringe players. They're two-way players where they're good for G League players, but on the back end of the bench for an NBA roster, which is typically where you're going to find yourself. And if you're lower usage in the NBA, it's harder to find your way. But his usage has varied greatly. When he's filled in for Cade, he's been able to take the reins and do well as kind of one of the primary guys. But he also can come in there and fill a rotational role very well, because there are things, even watching him play a lot in the G League, there are things he's doing in the NBA. It's like, man, he's even more athletic. He's forcing himself to go faster, jump higher, do some things athletically that he wasn't doing in the G League. His defense has been very impressive. He might be kind of an awkward size, but given the fact that you've got Cade, who's bigger, he's getting in there and getting in the mix defensively, to where he's kind of getting, you've got that top tier of obviously Thompson, and then you got Holland that fills in for him. But you've got that, whenever Javonte Green comes in, I just assume every ball is going to get tipped. No matter where it's going, it's just going to get tipped by Javonte Green, and he's going to make a mess of it. Danis is almost in that same category. He wreaks havoc out there when he's on defense too.
Yeah, he plays really hard. And, like Ron or any of these guys, he just has that Pistons attitude about him. And you hear him talk, especially after getting the contract. He's very humble, But, every player that got drafted ahead of him, he resents that, and he shows that on the court is, I'm going to show you why I should have been drafted. And it really comes across. He really wants to win, and that means a lot. And I think at 6'4", is he the smallest guy on the roster, like on the regular roster? He might be. And that's, it's another nice thing about getting Kevin Huerter is he's a bigger guy, like a 2'3", with some size. But yeah, Danis is so much fun to watch, especially against worse or like mediocre defenses. Sometimes he'll struggle against better teams, which, who doesn't? But I'm really excited to see what he can do with a real contract, with a real role that he himself carved out. It's an awesome story, and I love that it's a homegrown kind of thing. He earned the opportunity, and I'm really excited to see what he does with it. Because when we got Dennis Schroeder last season, his shooting splits were not good. He was shooting something like 40% from the field and 30% from three. And then he shot up in the playoffs and was shooting like 48, 49, 47, 81, had a really good assist to turnover ratio. Danis is shooting right now 39% from deep already, which is just, as we've said, Duncan's the only real volume shooter, but not only do we need guys who can knock it down, we need willing shooters. And he has certainly proven to be that.
Exactly. Yeah, he's like you said, he fits in very well, and that's what they want for this team. Yeah, he's obviously Sasser's shorter than him, but I brought up the roster, and Sasser's shorter, but as far as weight goes and size, Jenkins is obviously less filled out. So he's listed at 6'4", 165, which would be by far the lowest weight on the team for sure. But he doesn't show it when he's out there. I don't know if he's playing at 165, but who knows? But he's playing a lot tougher than that and a lot bigger than that when he's out there. So it's a fun team. It's a fun team to cover and watch. I'm curious who else has stuck out to you over the course of the year, because there's a lot of, I ask this question of a lot of the analysts that come on, and I feel like there's a lot of answers that you can give, because obviously Cade is trending towards an MVP candidate. He's an all-star starter. Duran has come on. There's some obvious answers, but there's also a lot of depth players that have played well on this team. So I'm curious who else has stuck out to you other than Danis.
We were talking about this on the podcast. Cade's having an unbelievable year. He and Duran are both all-stars. We really feel like it's the year of Stu. Isaiah Stewart is just the heart of this team, and the rim protecting season he's having, I think he's getting enough minutes now to finally be considered for all defensive awards, which it's just a travesty that he hasn't before. He had a great season defensively last season, but he's also just gotten so much better at finishing. His hands, his touch around the rim, his left hand, him in the post, like he is so essential to what the Pistons do. And I think he's going to be huge, especially in the playoffs. We missed him so bad in the first round against the Knicks last year. As far as I'm concerned, Stu is untouchable in any trade, really, except for like one or two guys. I also know a lot of people have been really critical of Asar just because of how he struggles with offense. I think his defense is, first team all defense as of right now, and just so important to what the Pistons have done this season. He's a big part of why we're the number 2 defense in the league. And even though he's not a great scorer at this point, his disruption creates so many buckets for this team. And I just think that's the core of Pistons basketball, is defense to offense. But I just feel like so many great buckets come from disruptions made by a star, steals, blocks, maintaining possession, pushing the ball. I have to give him his flowers, because I understand it's frustrating when, he can't knock down shots or, has no 3-ball whatsoever. But I still love him and think he deserves respect. And yeah, there's so many more. Obviously Ron is incredible, and just like Danis has that Pistons ethic about him. There's just a couple Ron Holland signature plays that we've come to expect, whether it's just snatching the ball out of somebody's hands or forcing offensive fouls on screens. He's just so savvy in his second year. And again, not the greatest shooter at this point, but I still think there's so much potential there. And I'm so glad that Trajan didn't make a panic package some young guys trade move, because as cool as it would have been to get a starter, there were a couple names I thought would have been cool, but I think he's smart to stick with it and just sort of accumulate flexible pieces that support this exciting defensive core.
Exactly. And you hit on the main name that I'm always praising, which is Isaiah Stewart. He got a little heat when he was first there because they were trying to find, I think, a role for him, but it was almost like he was a victim of his own success to a degree, because they figured out he could shoot a lot better, I think, than they expected earlier, but then it wasn't quite good enough to be as dangerous as they wanted it to be and as much of a weapon. And then, that he did have some issues with some of the softer skills, that the hands, things like that. But he has obviously worked to improve, and for as frenetic of a pace as he plays at, he has gotten a lot better on the catch and on the footwork and being able to use both hands and all of those things. So people don't understand that basically he's putting up a case to be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, but the only thing that's holding him back is the fact that he may not qualify because he may not average enough minutes, which makes the case for Defensive Player of the Year even stronger, because he's not getting the minutes to put up better numbers and better stats.
It's so true. And you were talking about our depth, and I think it speaks to the team's progress of just how exciting the bench is. I remember a couple seasons ago, we would get these all bench lineups and I would just be like dreading it. And now I'm excited about it. They have so much energy. There's so many guys that can contribute on a big level, whether it's Ron or Stu and other things I used to dread seeing, like the double big lineup. It's worked a lot. Stu and Duran have played well. And, I'm not saying Stu should play 35 minutes at the 4, but it's absolutely workable. Whether JB thinks he's best off down low or he wants him to space and take threes, it's nice to have the option. And I think he's one of those players that's just gotten better every single season and just added something new and improved like pretty steadily.
Exactly. I'm a big Stu fan, and I agree on Thompson too. He's just got to find the right level of aggression on offense. He's got a lot of the footwork, he's got a lot of the moves, the athleticism, and I think that'll come in time. We have to remember that these guys are pretty young, just like people that were ragging on Duran. Yeah, he looks like he's about 35, but he's but he's a young guy still. So is Thompson. So, but appreciate you joining the show. Great stuff. Be sure to tell people where they can follow you and the podcast, because I definitely highly recommend it.
Yeah, check us out. Order of the Blazing Horse. We're on YouTube. We stream live, but we're also on Spotify. Everything else, we're on Instagram. Please give us a listen. We talk hoops, but we also have fun and goof around and play games, get some fun guests. But thanks so much, Ryan. This was such a treat.
I'm glad you could come on. I want to have both you guys back, and be sure to tune in to the podcast there, because it's a great listen. And we'll look forward to having both you and Harry back here in the future.
Can't wait.
Thanks, Becky. Take care.
Likewise.